Hi everyone, and you're very welcome to Exam Revision. So in this video today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the structure of the Leaving Cert Chemistry exam for 2022, and we're going to have a look at some predictions for the exam as well. So the first section of the video today, as I've said, is we'll look at the structure. So we'll start with that now. So your Leaving Certificate Chemistry exam in 2022 will have two sections on it. There is section A, which consists of 3 questions, and the questions in section A are usually, they're all actually experiment questions. So section A will test your experiment knowledge, and section B then consists of 8 questions, and those 8 questions consists of theory and experiments from all chapters on the Leaving Cert Chemistry course. So in the exam this year, you're going to be allowed to answer any 6 questions on the paper. So you don't have to answer a certain amount from each section. You can answer any 6. And each question is going to be worth 50 marks, giving a total of 300 marks up for grabs on the paper. Now, if you want to get a H1 this year in your Leaving Cert exam, you need to be scoring at least 270 out of the 300 marks. So that means you can only lose 30 marks, which is approximately 5 marks per question. So you can lose approximately 5 marks per question. And that means you need to know the course extremely well, but that's where Exam Revision can help you, as on our website we provide H1 standard notes and video tutorials of all topics on the course. And throughout this video, I'll be linking into the website and showing you what's available, etc. to you. So if we take a look at the timing of your exam paper this year, you have 3 hours to do your Leaving Cert Chemistry exam. And the chemistry exam, as we've said, lasts 3 hours, which is 180 minutes. So to break that down for you, you need to answer 6 questions in total. So I recommend that you take 10 minutes at the beginning of the paper to read over all of the questions and choose which ones you are going to do. Then you should also leave 10 minutes at the end of the exam to read over your answers and see if there's anything extra that you can add in, or if there's any parts that you didn't get to complete from certain questions, you can add them in at that point. After this, then, that leaves 25 minutes for each question that you have to complete, and there's 6 of them. If you follow this timing, it will leave you with 10 minutes to spare at the very end of the exam as well, and that will give you some time if you run over on certain questions, or if you need extra time at the end to read over things. Now, it's very important that you remember all questions carry equal marks, so that means you should be spending the same amount of time on each question because they're all worth the same. So for example, you shouldn't be spending 40 minutes on one question and only, let's say, 10 or 15 on another, because they are all worth the same marks. Now, as I've said already, section A of the experiment, it consists of 3 questions, and it is all based on the experiments that are on the Leaving Cert Chemistry course. Question 1 will always be a titration, be it acid, base, redox, or water. Question 2 will always come from your organic chemistry, and it will be an organic experiment. And question 3 is usually any other experiment that is on the Leaving Cert Chemistry course. So let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. If we take a look at question 1 for section A, we can see that we have our titrations. And the first few titrations here are linked with acids and bases. So we can see here that we have making a standard solution of sodium carbonate, using a standard solution of sodium carbonate to find the concentration of a hydrochloric acid solution, using a standardized solution of hydrochloric acid to work out the concentration of sodium hydroxide, using standardized NaOH to work out the concentration of ethanoic acid, and to determine the amount of water crystallization in hydrated sodium carbonate or washing soda. So they are 5 acid-base titrations. Now, the first one there, making a standard solution, that's not a titration, but that experiment slots into the majority of these questions. And it's important that you know the steps involved in making a standard solution. So let's take a look now at the ExamRevision website. So if you sign up to the ExamRevision website and you choose to sign up to Leaving Cert Chemistry, this is the interface that you will be presented with. And as you can see, we have the Leaving Cert Chemistry course done out into different units. So we're currently looking at titrations. Now, titration technique and calculations, they fit into unit 4. So in here, we have a video on our titration technique, and we also have a video on our titration calculation examples. We have a presentation and we have a resource pack. In the resource pack is your H1 standard notes. So if we take a look here for volumetric analysis, titration technique and first principles, you can see here we have notes on how to use your different types of equipment. We have titration tips, and then we go into our first principles calculation. So that's all covered in your resource pack, and then you have videos to go along with that. You also have a self-correcting quiz that you can go into to complete, so you can define what a titration is. So you pick whichever answer you deem is correct. I'm just going to pick a random one to see which is the following is used to make a standard solution. So that's your volumetric flask. Which of the following has the least accuracy and should only be used for approximation. So here we're testing your knowledge on your equipment. Which of the following is placed on a white tile, the conical flask. Which of the following statements is false about a pipette? I'm just going to pick a random one. And you can see which the following is false about a burette, which the following is true about a burette, etc. And you can continue on like that. And then there's a calculation question at the end as well for you to complete. So that is titration calculation and technique. Then if we go into acids, bases, and pH, we can see we have our acid-base titrations here. And I go through each of your acid-base titrations on the chemistry course, and they're also covered in the presentation and the resource pack. So if we go into this resource pack then, and your notes, we can see I give you steps to prepare a standard solution. We look into sample questions that come up for standardizing hydrochloric acid using sodium carbonate, etc. So that's just a little quick tour around your acid-base titrations on the ExamRevision website. So let's go back now to our presentation and take a look at some of the other titrations that there is. So if we come back to our presentation now, we can see that we have redox titrations to look at as well. So you can use a standard solution of ammonium iron 2 sulfate to standardize a solution of potassium permanganate. You can use a standard solution of potassium permanganate to work out the amount of iron in iron tablets. You can prepare a solution of sodium thiosulfate and standardize it with an iodine solution. And you can also determine the percentage of sodium hypochlorite in bleach. So again, let's go back to the ExamRevision website. So we can see here that oxidation and reduction is under unit 6. And if we go into unit 6, we can see there's 3 subunits, and we're interested in the oxidation reduction titrations. And in we go, we have our 4 titrations done out here for you in video format. And we also have an introduction on the theory behind the titration. So let's look at a video this time, for example. So this one is your ammonium iron 2 sulfate calculation. Reduction titration. And what we're going to do is we're going to prepare a standard. So we can see then that the video brings you through. So I give you some of the sample questions. So let's just have a look at one here. And the reason is because ammonium iron 3 or 4 decimal places is because it has a high molecular mass. So there we can see why it is not necessary to weigh out the ammonium iron 2 sulfate accurately. It's because it has a high molecular mass. And a feature on the website as well is you can increase the speed of the videos if you want to move through them quicker. So that means there is a leniency there for error in your. You can hear there that the speed of the video can be moved up or slowed down for you. Similarly, we have a self-correcting quiz and we have our presentation and notes there as well for you. So that should help you with your oxidation and reduction. So finally, let's take a look at our water titrations that are left. And there's 2 water titrations, and these are to measure the level of hardness in water and to measure the level of dissolved oxygen present in water, which is the BOD test. So again, these titrations are available on the ExamRevision website, and you can go and have a look at them there. Now, a top tip for your titration that I would recommend is to know your indicator and know your color change. That's really important. And secondly, all calculations must be completed using first principles. So don't use the M1, V1, N1 formula because it is not guaranteed to work all of the time, where first principles will work every single time. So that's question 1 on titrations. Next, if we look at question 2 is all of the organic experiments that are on the course. So here we can see there's the preparation of ethene and ethyne and their properties. There's the heat of reaction with HCl and NaOH, the extraction of clove oil from cloves and its isolation, preparation of a sample of soap, our benzoic acid, so the oxidation of phenylmethanol, the recrystallization of the benzoic acid and determination of its melting point, properties of ethanol and ethanoic acid, and chromatography. Now, a top tip that I have for you for your organic experiments is you definitely need to know how to calculate the percentage yield, as it comes up quite frequently in soap, clove oil, and benzoic acid. And you need to know your reagents and catalysts. And I would also say there, you need to indicate in your exam what you're referring to when they say reagents and catalysts. So in your exam, I would be writing down reagent equals catalyst equals, and that way you're being very clear and you're bagging all of the marks that are going for that question. So let's take a look now at the ExamRevision website for your organic experiments. So on the ExamRevision website, Unit 7 is all based on organic chemistry. So if we click into that, you can see we have fuels and we have organic chemistry families and reactions. And if we go in there then into reactions, that is where we will find our preparation of our experiment. So you can see here, experiment 2 is preparation of soap. Then you've got your reactions of ethanol as experiment 5. The reactions and properties of carboxylic acids or ethanoic acid is experiment number 7 there. And number 8 then is the experiment to produce, recrystallize, and look at the melting point of benzoic acid. Now in there, we also have some quizzes and some notes as well for you, and they're all H1 standard. So that is a good go-to area for your organic experiments. So the last part of section A then would be your other, as I call it, and it is basically question 3, which is made up of, usually made of multiple parts. That's started to creep in recent years, that they're asking multiple experiments in it. But basically the experiments that are here are anything that doesn't fit into the titration or the organic chemistry section of the course. So you have in this section flame tests, which came up last year, redox reactions and displacement of metals, which came up last year, and tests for anions, which also came up last year. You can also have the relative molecular mass. You can have the rate of production of oxygen from hydrogen peroxide using manganese dioxide as a catalyst. You have how concentration affects rate of reaction and temperature. You've got your Le Chatelier's principle. You've got your free chlorine in your water, and you've got your dissolved, suspended, and pH experiments with your water. Now, when it comes to the ExamRevision website, these experiments are scattered across the website depending on what unit they come from. So let's just take a look at one of the units. For example, we'll take a look at rates of reaction and the experiments for those. So on the ExamRevision website, rates of reaction is here under Unit 10. So if you go in under Unit 10, all of the experiments on the website are indicated with EXP. So you've got the production of oxygen, you've got the effective concentration on the rate of reaction, and you've got the effective temperature on the rate of reaction. Now, in this, in our resource pack then, if we click into that, you've got your revision notes for rates of reaction. We flick down, we have our production of oxygen, got our key points, and we've got some sample questions. I've given you a sample graph as well, along with some notes on the graphs, how to calculate instantaneous rate, which is important in the experiments, and so on. So there is all that you'll need for your, let's say, rates of reaction experiments, if they were to come up on question 3. So that's section A completely dealt with. Let's move on to section B. For section B, there's 8 questions, and some of them have choice, some of them don't. So question 4, in section B, it will have an internal choice, and we'll get to that in a second. Same with questions 10 and 11. They will also have an internal choice. Questions 5 to 9 do not have choice within them. So that means if you choose any of these questions between 5 and 9, you must answer every single part of those questions. So let's take a look at each of these now in greater detail. Question 4, as I've said, there's internal choice. And this year there will be 12 parts in question 4, of which you have to answer 8. Part L of question 4 this year would be from the option. So if you haven't completed that, you have a possibility of answering 11 parts. My top tip for question 4 would be, it's a question where you should answer as many parts as you can. There's 12 parts there. You will get marks for your best 8. So if you answer all 12 and you only get 7 of them correct, you'll get 7 marks for 7 answers. But if you answer, there's no negative marking. So even though you'll have gotten, let's say, 5 of them wrong, you'll still get your marks for your 7. Where if you only answer 8 parts and you get one of them wrong, then you're still only getting marks for 7. So in order to maximize your marks in question 4, I really do recommend that you answer as many questions or as many parts of question 4 as you can. Now, question 5 is usually centered around the atom, the periodic table, including trends. There's bonding, and there's radioactivity. Now, one thing I will say about this question is it's very difficult to get full marks in question 5. It's a very precise question. The answers are very specific, and the marking scheme does be very tight around question 5. So it is a question that's very important, but there's a lot of content in it, and it is very, very, very precise. And there's a lot of keywords that are needed in it. So often it is a question that isn't answered very well, and marks are quite low on that question. So that's just something to be aware of when it comes to question 5. Question 6, it's another organic chemistry question, and this is based on fuels and thermochemistry. Now, my top tip that I would have for the question 6, which is on fuels and thermochemistry, you are definitely going to get either a Hess's law or a heat of neutralization calculation in that question. So they are things that you would definitely need to know going into the exam. And if you're doing question 6, you should really ensure that you know your heat of neutralization calculation and your Hess's law calculation. So let's take a look at these resources on the ExamRevision website. So we're looking for fuels and heats of reaction. Now, fuels and heats of reaction, and thermochemistry, it falls under organic chemistry. So if you go into organic chemistry there, you will see fuels. And in here then you have all of the theory that you need on your fuels. And there's quizzes there, and there's resources, notes as well. If you want to find thermochemistry on the exam paper, your thermochemistry, you can find that in unit 3 here on stoichiometry, moles, and solutions. So if you go into thermochemistry, then you have theory on heat of combustion, formation, and reaction. There's the experiment on heat of neutralization, including the calculation, and then there is a video on Hess's law. So if we click into the video on Hess's law, it'll start to play for us. So in this video, we're going to look. So with Hess's law, I go through some theory on it, and then I go through an example, and I clearly show you what you need to do with each part of the example and each step and how it works. So there's 2 examples in there for you to have a look at in thermochemistry. Similarly, for your heat of neutralization experiment, in that video, I go through the experiment with sample questions, and then I go through a sample calculation with you as well. So that is your thermochemistry and your fuels notes on examrevision.ie. So the next few questions are questions 7, 8, and 9. And in questions 7, 8, and 9, as I've said previously in the video, there will be no choice in these questions. But what you are guaranteed is that one of these questions will be on organic families and reactions. So it's really, really important that you know your families and you know your reaction types, including the reagents and catalysts. So in this question, you could be asked about families, you could be asked about the alcohols, the aldehydes, the ketones, the carboxylic acids, the esters. You can be asked about the reactions that they involve when they're oxidized, when they're reduced, what happens when we add some of them together, what happens when we substitute them, etc. So organic chemistry is a big part of the chemistry, the Leaving Cert Chemistry exam and the Leaving Cert Chemistry course. So we have dedicated a full section to this on examrevision.ie. So if you take a look here on the website, you can see Unit 7 is linked with organic chemistry. So when we go into organic chemistry, you have your organic families and reactions. And if we click in there, hopefully it will bring me in, there we go. It gives you substitution reactions, your soap experiment is in there, you've got addition reactions, elimination, you've got organic compounds acting as acids, etc. So if you go into these, let's go into our substitution reaction for a second. And if we press play here, it brings us along through all of the key points of substitution reaction, and it gives you definitions and mechanisms for a substitution reaction, and that is very important this year in the chemistry exam, as it is every year. So that is your full section there on organic chemistry, and as you see, there's 2 quizzes and a PowerPoint presentation as well. Now, the other 2 questions out of 7, 8, and 9 will include the following topics, but is not limited to rates of reaction, equilibrium, water, acids, bases, and pH. And usually questions in these questions, it will be a long question on these topics. So it could be a full question on rates of reaction, a full question on equilibrium, or a full question on water, or a full question on acids, bases, and pH. Now, when it comes to questions 10 and 11, again, questions 10 and 11 have choice in them. So question 10 will have 3 parts, of which you answer 2. And question 11 this year will have 4 parts, of which you answer 2. Now, part D of question 11 this year is from the option. So if you haven't completed the option on your chemistry course, then there really is only 3 parts that you're able to answer. Now, topics that are included on these questions, questions 10 and 11, include atomic theory, equilibrium, acids, bases, pH, stoichiometry, water, electrochemistry, organic chemistry, properties of gases, and oxidation and reduction. And what I would definitely be thinking along the lines that will be coming up, I would definitely see a full 25 marks going for stoichiometry, so that will be important to practice. And I would also see a full 25 marks going for oxidation and reduction, linking to oxidizing agents, reducing agents, and balancing oxidation reduction equations. Now, you'll see here I've mentioned equilibrium, and I've mentioned acids and bases and pH, and I've mentioned water. These will only come up in question 10 and 11 if they have not already come up in questions 7, 8, or 9. So they are more than likely won't appear twice. There will either be a complete long question, or they will form parts of questions 10 and 11. So some top tips that I have for you for the Leaving Cert Chemistry exam this year. The paper asks you to answer 6 questions. That's what you should answer. It's all about the quality over the quantity. If you answer 9 questions on the paper, as an examiner, they may see that straight away as you don't really know your topics well enough, and that you're spreading yourself over a variety, multiple questions to try and get as many marks as you can. Also, the quality of your answers won't be very good. If you have enough time to answer 9 questions, the answers are not detailed enough, they're not precise enough, and you're not picking up the marks you should. So I would always say, and I say this to students all the time, it is quality over quantity. Write good quality answers for 6 questions rather than writing little bits for 9 or 10 questions. If you have time at the end of the exam this year, which may be likely because of the allowances that have been allowed with COVID, you could answer a 7th question, but that would be as far as I would go. So if you want to answer a 7th question, you can, if you have time. But remember that if you answer a 7th question, you are only going to get marks for your best 6. So time that you have put into one question is going to be completely disregarded and is going to really be a waste because you're not going to get marks for one of those questions. So remember that. If you answer 6, that's what you're going to be getting your marks for. So answer them really well. If you start answering any more questions than that, some of those marks won't be in your final grade, and you'll technically have wasted that time that you could have spent perfecting and gaining more answers in your top 6 questions. For calculations, it's important to show all steps in your calculations, and that's really important. And there's a particular emphasis on calculating the MR in recent years. So you must show how you calculated the molecular mass of something when you're doing conversions in stoichiometry or in volumetric analysis. If you're drawing a diagram, you should make sure it's fully labeled, and fully labeled to me means a minimum of 5 labels. Label as much equipment and chemicals in it as you can. You won't lose marks for labeling too much. It's very important that when you're doing graphs that you use graph paper. And this was something that I saw this year when I was correcting mock papers. Students were losing 3 marks for not drawing their graphs on graph paper. Their graphs were perfectly correct, but they had drawn them on plain paper, so they lost 3 marks. So make sure you draw graphs on graph paper. It's also important to make sure you answer what's actually asked, not what you want to have been asked or what you think has been asked. Read the questions carefully. So read questions and highlight keywords to make sure that you are answering what is asked, because that is the only way you're going to achieve maximum marks. And finally, it might sound silly, but a neat and tidy layout really is favorable when it comes to the Leaving Cert Chemistry exam. You have to remember that you're one of hundreds of scripts that your examiner is going to be correcting. And if yours looks nice and tidy, the examiner is going to find it easier to correct, and they will enjoy correcting it more. So they won't be basically in a mood and won't be harsh on their marks with you. So now let's get to the second part of the video. And the second part of the video is probably what you're all here for, and that's the predictions. But what I do want to say before I put this up is that we don't know what's going to appear on the exam here in ExamRevision. I have no clue what's going to come up. We don't have any inside information. Nobody has a way of knowing what comes up in the exam. No one knows. The predictions that I'm going to give now are just based on previous trends and topics maybe that haven't come up in a while, or topics that I see that maybe have been answered poorly in previous years from correcting. So let's have a look at these predictions now. But again, these do need to be taken with a pinch of salt, and these are not guarantees. These are only what we think here will come up at ExamRevision. So let's take a look at question 1. We can see here in question 1, I've done out a table for you, all of the titrations that have come up between 2011 and 2021. So I've given the year, I've named the titration, I've given the topic it's on, and I've also given the unit that it's on for you to go and check on the ExamRevision website and have a look at it. So let's take a look, for example, the percentage of sodium hypochlorite in bleach came up in 2021. So if we go over to the ExamRevision website, the presentation there told us that this is in unit 6. So if we go into oxidation and reduction, and we go into unit 6, which is oxidation and reduction, and we go into the titrations, we can see there that experiment 5 is the percentage of sodium hypochlorite that is present in household bleach. So and this is all done out for you with calculations, etc. In that video. So that is a good reference for you to have when you are revising, so that you know what units these experiments are coming from. Now, from looking at the previous exam papers, I think it's going to be another redox titration this year, and I think it's going to be iron tablet. If you take a look, the iron tablet experiment hasn't really appeared in quite a while, But it could also be an iodine thiosulfate titration, which came up in 2017. So they will be the two that I would really be focusing on. Again, I'm not 100% sure that they will come up. No one is. No one knows until you open the exam in June. But this is what I would be predicting for question 1 this year. And we can find the iron tablet and iodine thiosulfate titrations in the oxidation reduction unit 6 that I've just shown you. So that's our titration prediction. Let's take a look at our organic chemistry prediction. So for question 2, if we take a look, again, I have a similar table done out for you, the year, what the experiment was, what topic it came from. They're all from organic. So they are all from unit 7 on the ExamRevision website. Now, if we take a look, from the previous slide that we looked at, organic includes soap, clove oil, benzoic acid, production of ethene and ethyne, tests for properties of ethanoic acid and ethanol. But based on what I have looked at on the trends, clove oil, although it came up in 2018, it was just the production of the clove oil. There actually hasn't been a full long question on clove oil in quite a while. So that's what I think it will be. It will be clove oil, it will be steam distillation, and the liquid extraction coming up, I personally think. Now, some of this did come up in question 3 a few years ago, but I think it hasn't been assessed as a full question in quite a while. So clove oil would be the one that I would be going with there. As a backup, I would probably have ethene and ethyne in the back pocket, but for higher level, they're very easy. So you probably know those anyway. Now, if we wanted to look at our organic experiments, as I've said, they're all in unit 7 of the ExamRevision website. So if we come back to the ExamRevision interface, we can see here organic chemistry, and the experiments will be in the organic chemistry families and reactions folder. So if we go into the reactions, this is where they will be. So you can see preparation of soap, the reactions and properties of ethanol, the reactions and properties of ethanoic acid, and you can see the benzoic acid there as well. So that is the experiments there. And if you're looking to find the clove oil experiment, that's in the families chapter, or the families unit on the ExamRevision website. And you can see here it is number 6, experiment, extraction and isolation of eugenol, which is clove oil, and that's by steam distillation. If you're looking to find your ethene and ethyne, you would know that that is mainly in the fuels section. And there we have it there. Number 3, preparation and properties of ethene and ethyne. So we have all of those videos there for you on the ExamRevision website. So you're completely covered with videos and H1 standard notes for all of your organic experiments. So for question 3 then, question 3 is a lot more open when it comes to predicting what can come up. It is the other experiments, so they can come up from multiple parts of the course. And as you can see, sometimes they filter in some of the organic into it, and they come from a variety of units. But for 2022, I think it could be the production of oxygen, because that hasn't come up since 2016. And the production of oxygen experiment will also test your graphing skills. So you probably will be asked to find the instantaneous rate in that question as well. So you could be asked to find the instantaneous rate in that question, or it could potentially be the heat of reaction experiment. So that's your HCl and your NaOH with your polystyrene cups. That hasn't come up since 2018. So they are all available as well on the ExamRevision website. So that's section A fully dealt with. If we go to section B, there's a few hot topics that I would definitely be looking at. And as we've spoken about already in the earlier part of the video, there is certain topics in section B that you're guaranteed. So you're definitely guaranteed a fuels question, and that will also include thermochemistry. So what could pop in there in thermochemistry is you could have any definitions or anything like that, but calculations wise, would be Hess's law or heat of neutralization. and they could bring in your experiment on heat of neutralization or heat of reaction. You're definitely going to be asked a question on organic, and that question is based on the families and the reactions. And one thing I would definitely say this year, you need to know the mechanisms. So you need to know the mechanism for your substitution reaction, and you need to know the mechanism for your addition reaction. I think one of those will definitely come up this year. And you're also guaranteed a question on the atom periodic table that does include bonding, just to be clear on that, bonding trends and radioactivity. Now, I do think a section might be on radioactivity this year, and it may also appear in question 10, because it hasn't been assessed there in a while. As I've said, that atom periodic table question, very heavy and sometimes difficult to get marks. So maybe one to avoid, as there's other topics that might be more easy to get marks in. When it comes to questions in section B, I think there is going to be a full question on water this year because sewage and water treatment hasn't been assessed in quite a while. And I also think there will be a long question on rates of reaction if it is not assessed in section A. Now, that's not a guarantee. That's just from what I've looked at based on previous trends. There hasn't been a full question on rates of reaction or water for a while. And there tends to be, last year was equilibrium, acids and bases, and pH is a full question. So I would think only one of those this year will be a full question, and that's more emphasis will be placed on water and rates of reaction. So that is the predictions for this year with ExamRevision.ie for Leaving Cert Chemistry. So just to finish up, this is the ExamRevision website, ExamRevision.ie, and we have new pricing plans here at ExamRevision.ie. So you can now get a standard plan on ExamRevision.ie for any of our subjects at Junior Cycle or Leaving Cert. And these include all the video tutorials, all the PowerPoints, all the exam questions and marking schemes, and it's only $19.99 per month. So it could be a worthwhile investment for the next few weeks for Leaving Cert Chemistry. You'd have the full Leaving Cert Chemistry course at your fingertips for $19.99 a month. And then there's a premium package, which also includes the self-correcting quizzes, and that is $29.99 a month. So for 20 or 30 euro a month, you could have the complete ExamRevision chemistry course at your fingertips. And when you compare that to the cost of grinds these days, it's a very, very good price to get. So I would recommend from now until your Leaving Cert Chemistry exam that you sign up to ExamRevision, because it'll only cost you 20 euro and you'll have the whole chemistry course there for you, H1 standard notes, H1 standard videos, PowerPoint presentations, and your quizzes. So that's all for the Leaving Cert Chemistry exam layout, tips and predictions this year. Just to reiterate again with the predictions, I don't know what's going to appear on the exam. Nobody does until you open the paper in June. The predictions are just based on what I've seen in previous years and things that maybe haven't appeared in a while. So that's it. I wish you the very best of luck with your Leaving Cert Chemistry exam, and hopefully we'll see you again soon at another exam revision video, or you'll sign up to the website to help you in preparation for your Leaving Cert exam. So the very best of luck, and thanks for tuning in today.